Hey guys, what's going on? And welcome back to another Run Pure update. PGA is back in full swing and our members have been crushing it with all of the great content we've been putting out. And speaking of crushing it, we had some monster hits this past weekend thanks to our guy Sepp Straka, who was one of AP's top picks for the Honda Classic. The Discord was overflowing with big wins this weekend, including a monster shipper by JN Gendry 912, who won over $275K on DraftKings. AJG 12991 pulled in $100K on DraftKings as well, and of course, AP himself rode Straka to a $50K win to cap off a great PGA weekend for RunPureSports. We'll be producing PGA content throughout the week, both free and premium, including main slate and showdowns. So make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on those notifications so you don't miss out when we drop any content. And speaking of PGA, we are 1 week away from the Players Championship, one of the biggest events of the year. So let's recap last year's event when Big T took down the PGA Millie Maker.
Anytime I can get 4 par 5s with Bryson, I'll take Bryson still. I'll take my chances, but I'm taking JT at 20 to 1. I don't even care that we like the same dude. I gotta find something in the mid-range here. Let's see.
Take Burns, you take Connors.
Yeah, definitely. I want Connors. I'm taking Sergio at 80 to 1 for my mid-range. Harmon's 225 to 1. Dylan Smith just made fun of me. Sergio, yeah, he's 80 to 1. Dylan Smith, stop. Chris Myers says Big T is going to take advantage of himself tonight. That is not true either. The wife is waiting for me. I guarantee that. So stop.
Shit, wife's waiting for you.
She
All right,
text me during the show asking me when I'm coming up, so stop.
Sign up today for a premium subscription to RunPureSports and take advantage of our combo deal with Sabersim to dominate in PGA as well as other sports this year. Access our content for all sports in addition to Sabersim's revolutionary DFS optimizer and projection system for one low monthly price. That's it for this week. As always, we will be back for more. Make sure you guys keep an eye out on Twitter. I've been giving out some PGA winners myself. But with that being said, make sure you do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got a new NASCAR show debuting this Sunday, but in the meantime, let's keep running pure.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Run Pure Sports Sabersim live show. We are answering your questions in the YouTube chat and the premium chat as well. So be sure to fire those things in. It's me and Jordan. We are breaking it all down, and he's going to show us a bunch of things. This is the time where, I'm going to pass it over to him. But before we do that, guys, like this video, subscribe to the channel. That way you can check out all the content. We got an NBA show coming up later. We got round 2 golf content at 9 o'clock tonight. So you don't want to miss out on that. So subscribe to the channel. That way you do not miss it when we go live. Jordan, I'll pass it over to you. How is your day, and what's on schedule today to talk about on Sabersim?
Yeah, it's good. My day's off to a good start here. Excited to be back on the show here. So I wanted to start things off again with another entry editor demo here. We did this last week, kind of walked through the basics of the entry editor. We did add a new feature to the entry editor this week, so I wanted to show that off. But just wanted to use this opportunity to go through a full demo here, the entry editor process again, just because I think it's so valuable. It can save a lot of time. And the biggest thing is it really reduces the risk of really costly errors 1 minute before lock when you're trying to get your final lineups in. So we'll go ahead. We'll start there. So I've got the app pulled up. We got the NBA slate here for tonight. Entry editor is over here in the top left on this entries tab here. And if you click this, we make it as easy as possible for you. You don't need to go get your own entry file from the site. You don't need to figure out where to go get that on DraftKings. As long as you're already entered into contests on DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo, you can just click this download template file link, and we'll go right over to the site, automatically download the file, and start downloading it to your browser. From there, you can just take the entry file, drop it in here, and we'll pull in the entries that you're currently registered for that particular slate. So we'll give this just a second to load up. And then we'll talk about a couple things that we're seeing here when this gets pulled up. So I just have a couple reserved entries to a handful of contests right now for DraftKings. On the left here, you'll see similar player table that you may see at the build screens here. It'll show you your exposures to different players. What's really cool about this is it'll actually show you your combined exposures across all of your different contests. So if you do fill these with different lineup sets, different builds that you ran, you can kind of see how exposed you are to different players all together once everything's together. But wanted to just quickly kind of show the new feature, and it's not too flashy, I guess, but it's been a really common request. We now have the ability to sort these contests here in the order that you so choose. So one thing that I've been kind of experimenting here with a little bit in the past week or so is sorting things by overall prize pool. And then what you can do is we added a new fill method here called unique rank. And what unique rank is going to do is it is going to take your lineups and it's going to fill them uniquely. It won't use any duplicates unless it absolutely has to. But instead of doing a random fill like the old unique used to do, you can now do a rank unique fill. So what this is going to do is it's going to take this 211 lineup set here and fill them in order of Saber score. Best 20 first to the and one here, next 150 to the mini max, next 20 to the quarter jukebox, and so on down the list here. So for those of you that maybe are a little unfamiliar overall with the entry editor, I'll explain kind of what these other fill methods do real quickly, just so you can kind of see the difference with the unique rank. The rank fill method, what that's going to do is that's going to put your top lineups into every single contest. So if we take this 211 lineup build and fill with rank, the best overall lineup is instantly going to go into everything and it's going to fill the single entry. The best overall 20, the same 20 are going to go into all the 20 maxes and they're also going to go into the mini max. And then the mini max will get the 150 here. So that's rank. And then unique random, pretty straightforward, very similar to unique rank, but in this case, we're just going to do this set of 211 lineups randomly gets dispersed throughout your pool. In this case, I have 211 lineups. And then finally, exact match here will only fill lineups where the number of lineups in the set matches the number of entries you have in the contest. So I can't demo that one here because I don't have, if we do a 211 lineup build, it's going to say this won't fill anything because we don't have a contest with 211 lineups in it. But that's kind of the quick walkthrough of the entry editor. Of course, the last thing you do once you're filled, once your lineups look the way you want them to be here, is you'll click the download button, download and open DraftKings, and it'll take you right back over to DK or FanDuel or Yahoo or whatever you're playing on, download that file for you and take you to the page to upload it. So very quick walkthrough, obviously more there to talk about, to discuss. But the new feature here, really the one that I think has been kind of a common request, is the ability to sort these and fill them with that unique rank method. So
here's a question for you, Jordan, because maybe you've answered this before. I don't think you just answered it now, and I think it could be answered here as well, but more so on like that when you're editing your lineups like late in the night. Let's say like it's 7:30 and I'm making changes to teams. One thing I've noticed an issue with is I play like sometimes I MME and then I have like one or like the three main teams that I'm like working on. And let's say I put in that big GVP, right? Like the $15. Well, like when I go to like edit all my teams, like let's say I did 50 teams or sometimes like if I do 50, I'll do 53 altogether. So it'll edit all the 53 within the builder and give me 53 teams, but I don't want to mess with those other 3 teams that I have because I kind of hand built those teams, right? Those are like kind of my main teams.
Yeah.
Is there a way to prevent that like with ease? Because I've definitely noticed some struggles with it when I've done it and having to kind of manually make sure it doesn't take that off that team. Because what if that team ships everything? That'll be very tilted. Of course.
Right. No, that's a good question. Big T asked me that same one a couple weeks ago. There's honestly, there's not a super great way to do that at the moment, assuming you don't want those main teams to be touched at all, right? So you're late swapping everything else in your main teams. Like in other words, let's say of this mini max, right? There were 140 lineups I wanted to swap, 10 I wanted to leave alone. At the moment, there's not a super easy implementation to do that. I would say the easiest thing, what I would probably do in that case, is probably open up the entry file and chop off the main teams and remove them from the spreadsheet and then re-upload the new file.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't thought to do that. That's a good idea. So
so that would work. It is our goal in the future. So this is, I guess, kind of getting into the semantics a little bit of the entry editor here, but right now everything's swapped by entry. It's called the entry editor, everything swap by entry. There's not a very easy way to isolate lineups and say, leave this lineup alone. That is a goal of ours in the future, to add a little bit more functionality surrounding that. So you could identify, instead of, you can pick your contest that you want to swap right now and swap on a per contest level, but we want to give people the ability to swap more on a lineup level. And that would kind of take care of that. So we definitely hear you guys on that, and want to add that in the future.
No, that's great. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, put them in the YouTube chat, put them in the live show chat as well. We'll answer any and all of your guys' questions here regarding Sabersim. I do want to talk about, we got a package combo over here at RunPureSports, $150 a month for all access to the RPS content and the Sabersim projections and optimizer. Remember, it's $170 for the separate subscription. So get in on that. And also, again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, check out all this content. We go live on Thursdays doing these shows. So definitely great to watch these, to learn a little bit more about Sabersim. Jordan, what else you want to show the people a little bit today and talk about here?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, a couple things. Since I just mentioned it, I might as well demo it here. So what I'm referring to, if you wanted to late swap things separately, for example, if you want to break things down, you want to handle your late swaps of maybe your 20 maxes outside of your 150s, you can just use the checkboxes here to handle that. We'll only, swap the contests that are checked. The late swap, of course, lives up here in the swap button. There's two different kinds of late swap in the app. The first is quick swap. What quick swap is going to do is it's basically the kind of global one-to-one player swap that you see on DK and FanDuel, but pumped up quite a bit. It's a little bit more powerful than that. So what we'll do is, if you go into quick swap, you can quickly just get all of the players that are out of your lineups, and we'll swap in the best available overall player for that lineup based on the position that's available and the salary that's remaining. If you've done this on DK before, you know that you can pick a player to swap out of everything all at once, but you have to choose the new player to go in the lineup. In this case, we can, optimize for that particular player's spot with the quick swap. That's a very quick version to just get a player that's out quickly out of your lineups. I know when we had the Anthony Edwards slate a couple days ago, I used this really quickly just to make sure I had no Edwards in my lineups. But the main event, I guess, for the late swap is up here with the late swap option, which is going to pull up the build settings, as you're probably a little bit more accustomed to seeing here, and let you totally rebuild your lineups, taking into account correlation, ownership fade, sim variance, all your settings, your rules, your groups, your stacks, that kind of thing. Really powerful tool. The way this specifically works is we lock in the players into your lineups whose game has already started. We exclude all of the players that are not in that lineup whose game has already started, and then we rebuild the best possible lineup around those guys with the remaining players in the pool for however many lineups are selected. Obviously, NBA late swap is crucial, especially this point in the season. We get those later scratches. We get that later and later news breaking. So I guess that's kind of the final point here on the entry editor side of why that late swap tool can just be so valuable. So.
All right, we got a question in the YouTube chat from
Okay.
Jones. He said, and this is an interesting one. I mean, I don't think it's just like a simple Sabersim questions, also comes into some game theory of playing DFS as well. When late swapping, are you decreasing the sliders as the slate goes on? It basically becomes a shorter slate as the night goes on, and leave them at the original in which you already built them. I mean, I think one thing I notice when I hear that question is, like, it depends what kind of ownership has happened so far. Mm-hmm. Let's say it's last night's slate. Honestly, if it's last night's slate, I might increase the sliders as the slate goes on, because there's such high ownership on some of those later guys, where on the earlier plays, there just weren't as many guys on them. So I think it depends where the ownership is for that one. I would typically leave the sliders the same. I just kind of leave them that way. How about you, Jordan? That's kind of something I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. It's like a Saber question and a game theory question.
For sure. Yeah, no, and that's a really good point. I think there's a lot of context that is kind of required here to answer this question. Best practice, I would say, if you just kind of want a general rule of thumb to stick to, is I would just leave them at where they were when you built your original lineups. However, I think there's some exceptions to that. First of all, if there's really impactful news that breaks, like an elite value play opens up because of some other star getting ruled out, I will sometimes actually turn my ownership fade and my sim variance sliders down, because I don't want to limit how much exposure I can get to the new elite play that's opened up because of where my ownership fade or variance sliders are set. I know that a lot of people out there aren't even going to bother to late swap anyway. Those that do, a lot of times aren't going to do it the right way. I don't care about at that point getting so much of an edge from ownership or from variance. I'm more interested, like, just pack the 9x salary value guy that's opened up in the last game into as many lineups as you can, and you can get that impact a little bit more with turning some of these sliders down. The other situation, and probably the only other time that I'll adjust sliders when I'm late swapping, is if I'm having a particular kind of outlier night in one direction or the other. Like if I'm killing it, if I've got maybe a legit sweat heading into the last game and I need to make some swaps for some news, if I've already got a lot of guys in the lineup that have gone off, they've gone off at low ownership, I feel like I'm in a good spot. I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of the variance and ownership fade heading into the final games on the slate and just get some of the best overall plays into those lineups to even help you block a little bit there. And vice versa, if I'm having a terrible night, looks like I'm going to have like a full donation kind of slate, I want to just win back some min cash equity, try to get out with what I can. I'll actually think about turning this up a little bit. Right at that point, give me the 1% owned guy, give me the 2% owned guy. I'm losing anyway. Let me try to win back a little bit of that equity there in the last game of the slate. So those are kind of the couple situations where I will make some adjustments. If you're unsure, and what I do 85% of the time or so is just leave things where they were.
Yeah. Another thing that I think is good. Sometimes, I mean, ownership projections are hard to do, right? And it's hard to update like right away. Sometimes I notice that like you might build out a team and like news hits, right? I remember like Bradley Beal was a guy that like he got ruled out and Neto became like the chalk of the slate. But like, of course it was right when it happened and like there wasn't a lot of time to adjust. And Saber had like a 3% guy, right? Like Neto, they had it 3%, but he's not 3% now, right? It's totally changed. He's like 40%. Sometimes then like when you use like the sliders, that's not all adjusted for it. So do you like, would you recommend like, what do you recommend to do in that spot? Cause that's something I had happen at once. And I was like, okay, maybe I adjust the ownership myself, or maybe I adjust like maybe I adjust what his projection is. That way it's like jammed on more teams. What are some of your suggestions there? Cause that's something I noticed with news changing in NBA so much. Obviously you guys can't just adjust it with a snap of the finger. It's going to take a couple minutes and sometimes you just don't have a couple minutes.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And I think one of the biggest challenges with ownership projections after late swap, when big news like that breaks, is that you don't know entirely how sharp the field is going to react to that. You don't know what percentage of the field is going to late swap. You don't know what percentage of the field even can. If you don't have any guard spots left available, even if the play is a 12x value play, you just simply can't get him in that lineup. So it gets hard.
Jordan, the best way to notify that I or check that out is, my opinion is, look at ownerships at other positions, right? Like, are you locked in it? Like, what is the shooting guard ownership at a certain spot? Like sometimes you can figure that out if the ownership is so low, and then you can really ramp down that sim variance like you were talking about.
Yep, absolutely. And so, from there, I would say one of the best overall things you can do is, if you've got a sense of a player is going to be chalkier than we're expecting after late swap news breaks, I would bump up his ownership projection. You don't even have to be totally accurate, totally precise. Just being directionally correct, just saying this guy's going to be higher than projected, is already going to add a lot of value to the process. From there, if maybe you don't have time to do that, or you're not sure what to do with that, I do think it's a good idea, if big news has broken and you think that the ownership projections are now going to be a little off, to turn down that ownership fade slider when you swap. The ownership fade slider, it kind of does two things. It's one, how much do you want to value ownership in your builds? But two, it's also a little bit of a measure of how confident you are in the ownership projections. If you are less confident in the way the ownership is projected, it makes a ton of sense to turn this down. So I would make adjustments to the ownership projection when you can. And if you don't have time, or you don't know what to do, or good idea to just turn that down.
Yep, I think that's a good point. Another question from Candace: how do you guys determine how much to bump a projection up or down? Obviously, you can just use the Saber, the RunPureSports. You can use whichever projections you want. My best advice that I use when I build out my stuff is, let's say like Fred VanVleet's on the slate today, so we'll use him as an example. Let's say that I think Fred VanVleet should be. Let's say I want more of him on my teams. Well, if I'll bump him 2 or 3 to start, see how much more I get. Like, I'm not going to bump him 10 fantasy points just to slam him onto my teams, because if I'm bumping him 10 fantasy points, like, maybe there's a reason why he's not on there. It's maybe because the guard value is so much better, and just the equation is saying you shouldn't have as much of him. That could be part of the reason. Another example, I think Big T this is one that I think he's kind of taught me, is like, let's say you have a slate. I think the slate the other day with Luka on it is a good example. He was like the premier spend up. I think he was like 60% owned. And yeah, there's reasons to fade Luka, but maybe like raw points wise, he just was the guy. So let's say you didn't like Luka and you have him at 60 fantasy points, bump him down to like, I don't know, 54, and don't completely remove him from your pool. And then if he's still getting 54, you've underprojected him a ton and he's still landing on teams, well, then that makes sense for you to play him. It's because there's other plays that are cheaper that are asking you to grab those raw point plays. Like when Malachi Flynn and Gabe Vincent did really well. Well, Pascal Siakam was on winning teams with 30 fantasy points, also because he was at very high ownership. So he's part of a lot of teams. But the point I'm getting at is sometimes raw points just matter and you need them. So that's kind of the way that I would approach it. Jordan, do you kind of do the same, or do you do anything differently?
You honestly took the words out of my mouth. I totally agree. I like to think about everything in about 10% bumps. So if I want to bump a guy down, I'll knock his projection down about 10%. If I want to bump a guy up, I'll bump him up about 10%. Again, not a big fan of removing players from my pool either. I like to make those adjustments and see how things shake out. And I think you nailed it, right? If you take Luka's projection down by 6 points, about 10%, and you are still getting him in your lineups, what that is saying is that even if the projection is wrong, if his true mean is 90% of what it was projected as, he's still an efficient play. It's just a really sound way of making adjustments, adding value, but getting the opportunity to kind of check your work. The last thing you want to do is remove one of the best plays on the whole slate because you just unclicked them and you could have just bumped his projection down and maybe cut your exposure in half or something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the reason it's doing it, it's going to put him also, it's going to put, like, let's say it's Luka. It's going to put him on teams that are more raw point teams, which, like, I think you're kind of unique in that way already, right? Because it's just, it's basically going to be on probably Stars and Scrubs teams. So like that projection set of Luka teams, they're kind of unique in their own way. You know what I mean? Like, of course, if the Luka team wins where it's like more of a mid-tier build or balanced or something, then yeah, your team's probably not going to be the one that's there. Yes, maybe a couple sneak in, but that's just my kind of thought process there of what the builder would probably end up doing. Dante has another question. He says, is there also a way to tell the builder not to play certain players together? I know that's something, I don't know if you guys have that for sure right now. I know that we have a little bit of an advanced settings thing. So maybe we can go into that and talk about like kind of some of the stuff that you can do in that area.
Yeah, so that's a pretty recent addition. Up until recently, the answer to that question was no, but you now can set kind of groups and rules and things like that for certain player combinations. So in the build settings, this rules tab will take you over here. This is where you handle your stacks. Not as important in NBA, obviously, but also your groups, which probably are a little bit more important on the NBA side. So if you go in here, add a group rule, we can take, for example, a common example, I think that comes up anytime Dallas is on the slate. Doesn't always pay off. I think both of these guys actually had pretty good games last time they were out, but I do like the Luka and Brunson rule. And you can group these two guys together and say, I only want one of these guys. So less than or equal to 1. And we can add other combinations of players to this group as well. There could be, other ones maybe on a night like tonight. I don't know. You got one that pops into your head here of a common group that maybe you want to use?
I know something I would have used last night, and maybe it'll help us come with an example. Like if I played Jalen Green, right? I'm laying Donovan Mitchell or Gobert ran back, right? Just because like if Jalen Green hits his ceiling, the price on him, but it's not the worst example. If Sadiq Bey is on the winning team, right? Or a Piston, that means the game's competitive and close. If the game is competitive and close, which is a 9-point spread, then I want probably exposure to one of Van Vliet, Trent, Barnes, Siakam. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's where it gets a little, okay. So it gets a little tricky here. So those conditional rules where you have, if this, then this, we actually have to do in a different spot at the moment.
Okay.
So for right now, these are just like, there are no conditions. This will just be true in 100% of your lineups that we will never use Luka and Brunson together. But I can show you.
You can, real quick, you can do Van Vliet and Siakam. That's another
That's a good one. Yeah. So if you wanted to add that group in here.
I think you can play both, but if I did play both, like I'm expecting that game to go nuts then. I'm expecting the Pistons to be, doing well too and running those guys back. But I think that's not a bad way to do it.
Yeah, so let's build some lineups here, and I'll show you because there is a way you can kind of do some conditional rules here in step 3, at least to to get some of those in here. So we'll give this just a second to build, and we'll talk about, so both of these features, this groups rule that I just showed here, and then what I'm about to show you guys with the filters here on step 3 are pretty new. It gives you a lot more control over the types of lineups that you're actually getting here. So this will be a pretty cool one for people to see as well. So
cool. Yeah, no, I'm excited to see it. I do like that you guys added that in, because I'm definitely big on some of those if then statement ones, because like I think at times it's just like with really bad teams, it makes a lot of sense for sure.
Yeah, so let's say, you know, we have the Van Vliet play, right? And we say that we want to say, if we're going to use Van Vliet, we want to make sure that we're running it back with 2 Pistons, for example. The easy way to do that would be, you've got Van Vliet here. You can click this filter icon, and this is going to say, only show me the lineups that have Van Vliet in it. And then what we'll do is we're going to say, we'll go over to the team stack side here and go over to, actually, we'll just say all here. And we'll say every single lineup, here's what we're basically going to do. We're going to take every lineup that has Van Vliet that does not have a Piston stack in it and trash it. So we can go over here, click the Detroit Pistons, this minus stack here. I know this is kind of low at the bottom of the screen. This minus stack is going to say, show me all lineups that have Van Vliet and don't have a Piston stack. And then we can go over to the pool and just say, remove all of these filtered lineups. So we are going to remove the 80 lineups from our pool that have Van Vliet with no Pistons run backs. Say yes. Confirm, remove our filters, and then bump this back up to 20 lineups. And now we can go back here and kind of see where we stand. So in this case, it said, okay, you want to make that rule? Fine, no Van Vliet. We can say, no, we want Van Vliet. I want 30%.
That's a great way to do it for sure. I was just thinking in baseball, I'm sure there's ways you can do it in baseball too, where like if you're playing a chalky stack, just say, hey, like Aaron Judge, like I want all the Yankees but like in Aaron Judge without kicking him out. And then maybe you still have him as one-offs too in spots, right? Like that's definitely a good way to do it, where you kind of can, because I like using that stacks tool a little bit, and I've been still trying to figure out how to navigate that thing as well. It's not the easiest. I was messing with the NHL, but you know, getting that right definitely takes practice, which I tell people, like, don't be doing it just around lock, like, you know, practice it like early in the day, because that stacks tool, I think, can have a lot of value for sure.
Yeah, no, highly recommend that. Especially if you're experimenting with some of this stuff for the first time, your groups, some of your filters, those things like that, give yourself a little time, practice that earlier in the day. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're trying to do a whole brand new process with 10 minutes before lock. So definitely agree there.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I ever used Saber, I watched a bunch of videos, and like I spent like 3-4 hours like watching stuff and playing with it, and then I felt way more comfortable, and I haven't done that in the past. So yeah, I think that's good. We got another question. Is there a time you actually remove players like low usage guys, limited upside guys? It's not a bad question, because I definitely think us at RunPure, we like to kind of have like more of a tighter pool at times. And I know some people, they like to have like a more diversified, where, hey, like I'm with you. It's lineups. I like lineups better than just like players and being overweight on guys. I think making the lineups unique is smart, but sometimes I do feel like I have too many players in my pool. So how do you kind of go through that process with getting rid of guys?
Yeah, I mean, so a couple thoughts on that. So the first thing, because we're using simulations to build the lineups, you're never going to get a lineup that is just bad. That is almost by pure luck. You know, a traditional optimizer, let me put this another way, is just going to ultimately optimize you lineups for the highest average projection it can. And you're kind of trying to put in all the rules to make it build lineups that resemble lineups that have some upside. In this case, because every lineup is coming from a subset of game simulations here, you know that there's a particular range of outcomes that are represented by that lineup. So if you're getting maybe a lower usage guy or a lower minutes guy, or maybe a high minutes, low fantasy point per minute kind of player or whatever, there's a simulation that backs that up, or a set of simulations that backs that up. And actually taking even one step more here, your exposure to those players, those types of players that maybe you wouldn't otherwise want in your lineups, will about match how often those kinds of players show up in the winning lineups. So I don't make a lot of changes to my player pool, because I kind of trust that the sims are going to build me the right kind of pool that makes sense for the contest I'm playing. That said, I think the Run Pure coordinators do a really great job building out their player pools, the cores. I know talking to all you guys here on this weekly show here, I can see how much work you guys put into this. I would highly recommend exploring those. You don't need to go through and do all the legwork yourself to build a good, strong core of players for a slate. That's kind of what the Run Pure content helps you do. So I definitely, when the player pools get posted, I know right now earlier in the day, definitely no NBA pools out, but there'll be an option here that changes and it'll say pool, just like the source drop down, but it'll say pool, and you can go in here, you can play with any of these guys as cores or pools once they're up on the app. So
yeah, if you could go to one of the GPP builds that you have, I can kind of give an explanation of what I do sometimes. Yeah. Man, it's not like a perfect science, but I do think it can be helpful. And I think I've seen, I think I saw Andy do it on one of the videos. I kind of look at that leverage number, right? That's one that I mess with. And sometimes I leave guys that are still on the negative leverage because I look at the ownership to decide, hey, do I think that ownership's right? Do I think it's wrong? Maybe I just don't care. Maybe I'm fine with being more even in the field. But as you can see, so Kobe White, you have it like 40. So he's like a 49 leverage right now. Obviously that ownership might not be like completely accurate, but let's say it is like 49. I don't love Kobe White. Like sometimes what I'll do is I'll just like maybe max him to like 20%, right? Like if I'm like, that's how I'll work with my pool. If I just think, hey, I want to be overweight by, a little bit, but I don't want to be that overweight. Instead of just kicking him out of the pool completely, I'll just max his ownership. That's kind of one thing I'll do. And then do you have any negative guys there? Cause that's always something that I look at. Let's see. Well, I guess they're not in this build set right now. Well, are they on the, they're in the pool, but they're not in like my lineups right now.
Let's go back. I think that I built that build's the one I use the rules for. So let's go ahead and look at this other build instead. I think we'll get.
Yeah. Cause I want to find some interesting examples on it. Cause I think this is definitely a way that I've narrowed down my pool. Like I do like the quick scroll and I just try and like, hey, like I try to do it quick too. Cause I'm not trying to like take like, all the time in the world trying to get it perfect. Cause like, you're not going to be able to, right. And there's so many other things going on around lock. Yeah, let's, where's the leverage thing?
Scroll this over here. There it is.
Okay. There you go. All right, cool. So like, I guess, are there any negative ones here?
Yeah. Let's look.
See if we can find them.
So yeah, I mean, Luka's negative leverage here in this build. We have no Luka in our first 20. And maybe you're not willing to roll with that, right? I think it's a great idea in this case. Right now, this is basically saying sorted by negative leverage that Luka is your third biggest overall fade on the slate. I don't know if I would be totally comfortable with that. You can set a minimum. You can easily
just put him at 20 if you're not comfortable with that. Go back to sort by the leverage again, like where it's at the top, and then scroll down.
Sure.
Because I want to see like some like the lower like guys that you don't have like a lot of exposure to on your lineups. Kind of this range. Yeah, this is something I look at. So like, for example, all these guys are positive leverage right now. Sometimes I'll see like, especially if you build like 150, sometimes I'll see like let's say that Jason Tatum, right? Whereas he's at 3.8 leverage right now. You got him at 20%. Sometimes when you build out 150, you'll see Tatum might only be like 5%. And then his ownership is at like 20%. Those are guys I try to just kick out of the pool sometimes. Now I understand that lineup.
I see what you're saying.
That lineup maybe could be unique, right? With like a Tatum, it could just have like a couple of like maybe 3, like 5% guys where it's like a unique Tatum lineup. But when I'm doing it really fast, that's kind of one of like the quick ways that I kind of just get the job done. If I feel like I really need to get my pool limited. And then if I have too much of a guy like that Kobe White, I know I did that max one. I do what we talked about before. And you can go back to the top. We don't have to do it with Kobe White. We can do it with someone else, but like just bump his projection down like we were talking about before and watch. It'll just move down. And then maybe you're more comfortable with what you're seeing. Like Bogdanovich, move it down from 32 to like 29. Or you can even do like the minus like that. I just type in the number.
Yeah, I think that's a little faster actually.
Yeah, I just quickly do it and I see what it bumps down to. If it goes down and what it go from 6, is it still 65 to 30? And like, I mean, I'm still leveraged pretty good, at least as what it says ownership wise. Now I'm sure it's not perfectly accurate. It's way too early in the day, but let's say ownership was at 15. Now I'm at that double spot. Maybe that's where I really want to be at and I'm more comfortable. So those are like some slight ways that I kind of do it. And I'm sure you've talked about this on some videos before, but it's kind of a question that was asked before.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think the leverage column ultimately, the best way to think about it is sorted either positive first or negative first, right? It should be in line with the way you want to tackle the slate. The highest leverage plays that you've got here at the top are your favorite plays. Those are the plays that you stand to profit the most from if those guys go off. You can also kind of use it as a way of like judging how strong you feel about one player versus the other. If we have 50% leverage on Jeremy Lamb at the moment and 25% leverage on Jakob Poeltl here, we're about twice as confident on Lamb as Poeltl. That might be true for the way we want to attack this slate. That might not. So you can really use this as a tool to kind of fine tune those exposures and get them where you want them to be.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great way to do it. And it's something that I'm definitely getting better at. And obviously watching these videos is helpful. Guys, if you could, again, like, subscribe to the video, helps us out a ton. Also, reminder, if maybe you're new to this, maybe you haven't used Sabersim, you can sign up now at RunPure. It's $150 a month. You get the RPS content, you get the projections, you get the Sabersim projections, the optimizer ownership, you get everything. So be sure to sign up and get in on that. Jordan, I don't think we have too many other questions. We got one that asks if we'll have a Saber baseball show once we find out about the season. Yeah. So we obviously need a season first. I'm sure we'll have it at some point here, and I'm sure you guys have some on your YouTube channel as well. If you want to dive into those, is that correct, Jordan?
That is correct. Yep, we've got our 2021 baseball course, I guess, is still up on our YouTube channel. Got to scroll down a little bit since it's not baseball season. We've got it closer down to the bottom, but a lot of great content there. Yeah, Sabersim crushes baseball. High variance sport, high correlation, really just gives you a huge edge. So I'm fingers crossed that we get it sooner than later, and we will definitely be doing some baseball shows when that time comes around.
Yeah, I'm really excited for baseball. I think I know I got a little better at baseball last year. I felt like I made some really good progress, but I think this year will be a good one for me. So I'm excited about that. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Jordan, any final questions or things you want to go over, or do we want to get on out of here?
I think that's about it for me this week. Again, I mean, maybe the thing to leave you guys with is if you haven't checked out that entry editor yet, give it a try. One way to do it is maybe play a slate that you're not normally playing. One thing that I'd recommend, if you've got a process down for the NBA main slate, you want to start using the entry editor, but you're a little nervous about it. I know getting your feet wet the first time can be a little nerve-wracking. Play small on like the night slate or something like that, and then go try it out for that. Give it a try, get familiar with it. I think as soon as you try it the first time, you'll be like, wow, this is great. This saves a lot of time, makes it a lot easier. And then you don't have the risk of feeling like you're taking your main slate normal action into a totally different direction than you're used to. But it really does. It saves a lot of time. And the main benefit of it is that it reduces the risk of totally blowing your CSV at the last second. So that's it, though. That's all I've got.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute, so my bad there. But I'm with you. I think practicing that is really good. Practicing on different kind of slate. Maybe you play the night slate, right? Yeah. Like mess with that. It's similar to kind of your research process from earlier. There's definitely ways to do it. So I'm in on that. But that'll wrap it up for us. Thanks a lot for joining us here on this Saber Show. Be back next week. Be bringing all those questions to the people, and don't miss out on the shows tonight. Subscribe, check out the 4:45 show. We got the premium show at 6 o'clock, and then we got the Showdown golf show tonight at 9. So tons of content rolling for you guys here. But that'll wrap it up for us. For me, Mangone, and Jordan. We'll see you guys later.
See you.